Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Ask Monica. Today we are going to be talking about a certain part of the menstrual cycle, the second part called the luteal phase, and we're going to be talking about a certain hormone produced in that cycle called progesterone and why it's so important. So let's go to the board for the beginning part, and if you look at a 28-day cycle, and not all women have 28-day cycles, but we're going to talk about that just to simplify the process. We have a couple important days drawn in here. So day 1 is day 1 of bleeding. Day 14 is an important day because it's when ovulation takes place. And what happens in ovulation is we have a follicle that is starting to grow, a fluid-filled cyst that holds an egg, and on or around day 14, that follicle ovulates. It goes into the fallopian tube, and what's left is this cyst called the corpus luteum. Get that out of the light a little bit here. Okay, and what's left is this cyst called the corpus luteum. And what this corpus luteum does is it produces a hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is incredibly important, and particularly in the second part of the menstrual phase, because what it does is it changes the uterine lining from a growth lining, and that's called the proliferative phase, to one where there's some glands and one where there's some specialized cells. And all of these are important because they create a uterine lining that is helpful in terms of implantation of an embryo. So without progesterone, we wouldn't have the specialized lining, and we wouldn't have an ideal environment for a blastocyst, which is the cell stage at which an embryo implants to implant into the uterus. So how do we know that these cells are created? How do we know that this second part of the menstrual cycle is adequate? There's a couple ways to measure now, but one of the ways is to measure the progesterone level. So if the corpus luteum is secreting progesterone and the level is elevated at a certain amount, so it reaches a certain height, then the assumption is that the adequacy of the luteal phase is good. So if we check a progesterone too close to ovulation, we're going to get a low progesterone. So we don't want to check it too close. When we want to check the progesterone is the day at or around implantation takes place. In a 28-day cycle, that is day 19 through 21. So on day 19 through 21, this is an important day, and it's called around, for most women, not every woman, that's the window of implantation. So if we check the progesterone at this important day, and the progesterone level is adequate, and what adequate in your lab means could be very different than what it means in our lab. Some people think the level has to be 8. Some people think the level needs to be 12. Some people think the level needs to be 15. It doesn't matter, but what matters is in your lab what that level needs to be. If that level is low, then we might assume that the endometrial lining needs more progesterone in order to be adequate. So then we would go ahead and prescribe you progesterone to take then, usually vaginally, and you would continue to take that until you do a pregnancy test. If that pregnancy test is positive, you would end up staying on that progesterone, and you would stay on that and probably until about 8 to 10 weeks gestation, or a blood test confirms that the placenta at that point is making your progesterone, and we don't need to rely on your corpus luteum anymore. If that pregnancy test is negative, you would stop the progesterone, and being on progesterone here might delay a menstrual cycle, so we always have you take a urine pregnancy test. And if that test is negative, you would stop the progesterone. You would get a period soon after, usually 3 to 4 days after stopping it. And then when you start your next cycle, we would supplement you with progesterone again soon after ovulation. Why? Because we want to be proactive. We don't want to wait and see if that there's something wrong before supplementing you. If this particular cycle showed an inadequacy at that level, then what we would do is proactively supplement you for the next cycle, also assuming inadequacy at that level. I think most people in the REI or infertility field think that it would be better to be conservative and supplement you than to have you be deficient in progesterone. I think we pretty much all agree with that. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you so much for your support of this platform. It's been so much fun to do, and your specific questions, and keep them coming. We love hearing what you have to say and hearing any of your questions. And if you have questions on this or any other thing that we explained, reach out to us or write in the comments of the Instagram. Thanks so much.